Hi everyone, thank you for joining us again for another webinar with RBC and another webinar with Vivian. So welcome back, Vivian.
Hello everyone.
My name is Sonia Siddiqui and I'm super excited for this webinar. Vivian is full of energy with her RBC shirt that I was really excited to see today.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, and Sonia, and hello everyone. My name is Vivian, and for those of you who have not joined my webinar in the past, just want to give a brief introduction about myself. I lead the inclusive recruitment team in RBC. And what we do is we go out to different diverse communities, including newcomers like yourself, and the persons with disabilities, Indigenous peoples in Canada, LGBT community. So we provide job search support, and we offer some workshops in partnership with employment agencies like ACCESS Employment. And we try to help candidates traditionally face employment barriers, break those barriers, and launch their career, like for newcomers, like launch their career in Canada, of course. We also internally provide some awareness trainings and education sessions to our hiring managers and try to help RBC build inclusive workplace. So a little bit about myself. I'm an immigrant, and you can hear from my accent. English is not my first language, but I do understand, because of my background, understand the challenges and the barriers as an immigrant coming to Canada, especially when you're looking for your first job, is not easy. So that's why we're partnered with ACCESS Employment and providing those workshops, and hope that through our effort and the information we provide, it can help your job search journey and make it easier, at least. And so that's, it's a very rewarding job I have here, and allows me to really pay it forward. And I'm very grateful to be working in a great company like RBC that supports newcomer initiatives like this. So very look forward to sharing some information with all of you today. Please do feel free as I'm talking and put down some questions, and Sonia would be able to help us select some questions, and we get them answered at the end of the webinar. I'm wearing, like Sonia mentioned, I'm wearing the newly received t-shirt today. Your difference is your strength. And I feel it particularly is in line with the message we want to share with our newcomer candidates, because a lot of times we hear candidates telling us, so I'm new to Canada and I don't have Canadian experience. Therefore, it's very hard for me to find a job. But I think first you need to believe in yourself, and then you need to believe that whatever experience you got from your home country, that actually helps you bring the diverse perspectives into Canada. And your global experience can be seen as an asset, depending on how you present your skills and experience, right? So do not let that lack of Canadian experience limit your perspective. You should try to see how you can really promote yourself and your skills, experience, and capabilities in the most effective way. That's why we want to say, let's dig a little bit deeper into some interview questions and the scenarios, and how you can best present yourself in the interviews. Okay, so that's a little bit maybe too long. So I want to really talk a little bit about RBC first, especially to share our commitment to newcomers, and you can see all the recognitions that we got over the years. And so we are very proud to be named by LinkedIn the top company, actually #1 company in Canada. We just got the Canadian Government Employer Award for Newcomer Employment. This is 2019. We just got it We have been Canada's best diversity employer for many, many, many years, and of course, Canada's top 100 employer. And what I want to highlight from RBC's commitment perspective is hiring from the community to serve the community has always been our one of our guiding hiring principles. You might not know that we serve our clients in over 200 languages. And guess who we hire to speak those 200 languages? Of course, they are immigrants just like yourself. So every year we hire a lot of immigrants like yourself who have the finance background and who can speak other languages like in your community. So we want to provide that kind of excellent service from the employees we hire from the community. I don't know whether anybody knows the definition of a visible minority. In Canada, visible minority is it's a Canadian employment equity term, means that you're non-white by color, non-Caucasian by race, and then not Indigenous. So a lot of immigrants fall under this category. So in Canadian workforce availability, the latest workforce data shows that 28% of our workforce availability are visible minorities, and at RBC we have 35% of our workforce. So it's much larger than the Canadian workforce availability. That shows our effort of the newcomer inclusion actually by hard facts. So I'm not going to go too much deep into our, who is RBC, and you can see from the bottom the numbers. We are a Canadian company. However, we do operate in 37 countries, including US, UK, Asia, and South America, etc. So if you want to know more about RBC, I do encourage you to go to our website, and we have our annual report that will give you a very good holistic view of who we are, what we value, and what are our business lines. So, Sonia, if you could move to the next slide. I just want to highlight a little bit more on our commitment to newcomers and help the newcomer launch their career in Canada. We recently launched our RBC Meeting Place. The first meeting place was launched in Brampton, and the second one was in Markham. We do have plans to launch a lot more in 2020. And what is RBC Meeting Place? We aim to provide a value-added service to newcomer community, not only your banking needs. So the goal is to provide actually beyond the banking service to our newcomer community. You don't have to be RBC client to come and receive our service. So for example, if you're a newcomer and what on top of your mind is finding a job, then our meeting place would be gathering that information and try to schedule some information sessions, maybe inviting someone like me to go and talk about our recruitment process and do some resume workshop and interview workshop. Maybe you want to know more about the childcare in Canada. So they would arrange some experts in that space and host some information sessions. So that's really showing RBC's commitment to not only our newcomer clients, but also really we want to help the communities prosper. Some of, from job perspective, I know that some newcomers have concern, because I have a foreign name, I have a foreign experience, how can I ever get hired by RBC? What I want to highlight here is in RBC, we have an extremely culturally diverse recruitment team. In HR is usually and sometimes less diverse, but however in RBC, our recent data shows that over 40% of our recruiters are visible minorities. And in Toronto, we have 48% of our recruitment teams that are visible minorities. So that shows a great culture competency that we bring to the table when we recruit candidates. Some highlights about our 2019 recruitment initiatives. We ran quite a few big recruitment events, and we go out to different communities and co-host workshops with agencies like Access Employment. So we hosted around 16 workshops and job fairs and etc. We supported over 1,500 newcomers just in 2019. So that's something that we are very proud, and we do have plans to continue doing so and maybe do more for our newcomers. What I also want to highlight is RBC is also the largest host for Career Edge internship. So for those of you who don't know about Career Edge, it's an internship. It's usually between 6 to 12 months that helps newcomer talents get their first Canadian so-called Canadian experience. It's not extremely, it's not very highly paid. And the goal is to really create that opportunity for you to get experience. So since the program inception, RBC has helped over 400 internationally trained professionals launch their career this way. So if you are interested in the internship opportunity, I do encourage you to check out the Career Edge website, and you can see some recent RBC postings there. Okay, so I'm going to stop here, talk about RBC. I'm going to just dive directly into interviews. So you have, successfully worked on your resume, and you got that call that, so exciting, invite you to the interviews. What can you do? Because for a lot of newcomers, this might be your first interview in Canada, and you don't know what should I prepare, right? And what is it to keep in mind? So that's something that in the past we very quickly, when I ran some webinars, I touched on the surface level of what to prepare. And today I do plan to dig a little bit deeper and talk a little bit about some interview tips. So Sunny, if you could move to the next slide. Yes. Okay. I would definitely say preparation and doing your homework are the most important piece to guaranteeing a successful interview. And one thing is always to research the role, research the company, and if possible, research even your hiring team and your hiring manager. Sometimes when you get a call from a recruiter and they will just send you the meeting invite, right? And you should be able to see the name on LinkedIn and check out, who's interviewing you, what's their background, is there anything that you have in common with the hiring team. If you cannot check that information, talk to someone who's already working in a role similar. Right, that will give you some additional information about the role, and it shows that you have done your research. And you might have a lot of questions after talking to that person, and after even reading the job description. Write down your questions. There's always a time and opportunity for you to ask those questions, but you need to get prepared. Why is it important to research the company? We hear this all the time. So when we interview people and we ask, why do you want to work for RBC? Well, RBC is one of those biggest banks in Canada, blah, blah, blah. And those kind of answers are not going to impress us, right? Because if you say RBC is one of the banks in Canada, that means, I can work for RBC, I can work for TD, I can work for BMO. I don't really care as long as I have a job. From the company's perspective, we want to hire someone whose value is aligned with our values and who's passionate and excited about joining such a great company as RBC, and who wants to know a little bit about our strategy and what differentiates us in the market from our competitors, right? So going through our annual reports and reading more about our values, our mission, our purpose, that's going to give you more advantage in the interview. Another thing to keep in mind is, so why we name our this webinar, Help a Hiring Manager Help You. You need to keep in mind that it's not only you who are invited to the interview. There might be 4 other people highly qualified, just like yourself, right? They're also invited to the interview. And we only have one position to hire. So what that means to you is the interview is not only about you, it's also about other 4 highly qualified candidates. So from hiring manager's perspective, okay, so I have, say I'm interviewing candidate A. I also have a B, C, D to evaluate. So your job is actually to help the hiring manager understand your skills and your experience and how you can help the hiring manager and the team most if they invite you to join. So always put that perspective when you're preparing your answers, when you're asking questions, and make sure that you stand out in each set of the questions at each stage. So something else to prepare, it might be very self-explanatory. Prepare the directions and the logistics. But you have no idea how many people make mistakes by the time that when they come and they cannot find us, or they went to the wrong building, they come at the wrong time, especially for newcomers, because most of us are not familiar with maybe the city, maybe the transit system. So it's not a bad idea, actually, if you have extra time to come in the previous day and check out the building, check out your route to the commute, and make sure that you have sufficient time to come to the interview place on time. You can come like 10, 15 minutes earlier. That's okay. But if you arrive much earlier, just go to the coffee shop and get yourself ready, calm down, take some deep breaths, right? And that's always recommended. Another thing is, I would always recommend you to ask for the contact person's information, not only email, but also phone number. Sometimes when you arrive and because you are, it's a kind of a stressful situation, and sometimes the recruiters, maybe they forget to give you the contact information. And then you're here, you have nobody to really connect with it. So always make sure that those homework are done before you come to the interview. Sometimes even it makes sense for you to ask for a second contact information just in case, so that you have that peace of mind. One thing I want to really highlight is at RBC, we're very committed to provide accommodation to people who have visible or invisible disabilities, right? So if you are on wheelchair, or if you are hard of hearing, who needs the ASL interpreter, or even if you just need a much quieter place because say you might have a little bit of anxiety and that kind of need, feel free to let our recruiters know. And whatever accommodation we offer you, the cost is on us. So never be shy and say, oh, I don't want to create additional trouble for the recruiters and the hiring manager. We want to make sure you are successful in the interview, and we will help whatever we can to make sure that your accommodation needs are met. So that's something I definitely want to point out. Okay, Sonia, if we could move on to the next slide. Okay, so what to wear? That's very important for the interview. So always, we would recommend, if you're interviewing for the role in the banking world, like client facing, dress like how you would dress for work. right, professionally and appropriately. Particular thing I want to highlight is in certain cultures, wearing strong perfume or cologne can be like accepted or even encouraged, right? In the Canadian workplace, there are some people who are allergic to strong scent. So we do recommend that do not use perfume or cologne. If you have to wear, do not wear very, very strong perfume or cologne so that people don't get the allergic reaction when sitting in the same room as you, right? Okay, so next one, Sonia. So what types of interviews? When you submit your resume, most likely the first interview you would receive is from our recruiter. That's usually between 15 to 30 minutes long. So when you receive a call from a recruiter, usually what you need to get ready is a 3-minute summary of when the recruiter says, oh, tell me a little bit about yourself, right? And most of the time when we receive that phone call, and because it's on the phone, most of the time what ends up happening is because we don't have anybody to face and talk to, there's no interaction, we would rumble on and on and on and on. So it's a 15 to 30-minute interview. Before you know it, you've been talking for 10 minutes and you don't know where to stop, right? So to prepare that kind of interview, I would always recommend you to have a 2 to 3 summary. It's what we call the elevator speech, right? A very brief summary of yourself, highlight your strengths and experience and why you're the best person for the job, right? And then allow the recruiter to ask you questions. You can have a very good interactive conversation with the recruiter. Because if you take the opportunity and talk and then stop, the recruiters would think, oh, it's rude to interrupt you. And as you are talking, you might second doubt yourself, right? You don't know, oh, am I talking too long? Am I, taking all the important points? So always try to make your first answer short and concise and clear. Another thing I want to point out is because it's over the phone, a lot of times you might not hear the question clearly. So it's always good advice, and it's always okay for you to ask the recruiter to either repeat the question or paraphrase the question, or you can say, oh, I heard you want me to elaborate a little bit on this. But I think there are 2 points that I want to focus on. I want to be respectful of our time. Do you want me to focus on A more, or do you want to know more about B? So there's always an opportunity for you to reinterpret the question and ask the recruiter where you want they want you to focus on, so that you stay on the topic. You don't waste your time on saying something that recruiter does not really want to, or the recruiter might not really be interested in, right? So take charge of the interview questions and take charge of the time, be respectful, and always remember to smile. So when you smile, actually recruiter can hear, and it really creates that good communication atmosphere. After all, you are talking to another human being, right? We always remember that. So sometimes you are invited to video interviews, and it happens. It might be because the hiring manager is traveling and they really want to interview you and get this done and provide the offer ASAP. And sometimes maybe you are, say you haven't arrived in Canada yet, but we really, this role is really critical for us. We don't want to lose you as a great candidate, so we do offer the video option. What to keep in mind is technology. Always remember to test and set up and they make sure that the technology works. A lot of times the video thing does not work because of the technology. Make sure you are in a quiet room that has the least distraction, like the background, and make sure the voice is clear. Dress like, do not dress in your pajama, dress like you're in an in-person interview to show your professionalism, right? When you're invited, and most of the time when you're meeting with a hiring manager, you will be invited to in-person interview, right? And what I want to point out is be conscious of your body language, especially the eye contact. Why? Because in Canadian workplace, direct eye contact is a sign of confidence. It's a sign of honesty, integrity, right? In certain cultures where, for example, the culture I'm coming from, sometimes direct eye contact can be a sign of a confrontation, can be a sign of disrespect, right? So always be mindful of those culture differences. I would definitely recommend you to practice in front of the mirror, or even with your kids, right, with your family members. And ask for, if you are, say, registered with ACCESS Employment, I know they offer great services to the newcomer client. Even sometimes if they have resources available, ask for a mock interview. That will help you practice not only how to answer the interview questions, but also have a nice body language that can show your confidence and showcase that you're ready for every stage of the interview and all the little details of the interview. Do those mock interviews. Okay, so let's go to the interview questions. The next slide. Okay, so I would say 70 to 80% of the interview questions you can prepare even before coming to the interviews. Why? Because those are all standard questions, behavior interview questions that you can find online before you come. And a lot of times when we do those kind of workshops, I get asked by the candidate, so do you have a standard answer to the question, right? I want to remind you that this is an interview and you are being interviewed. Like I mentioned, and 3 or 4 other great candidates are also being interviewed. If there is a standard answer to those questions, it would be impossible for the hiring managers to pick the best, right? So think from the hiring manager's perspective. There's no standard answer. There's no best answer. There's the answer that showcase who you are. That would be the best answer. So actually, those questions require a lot of personal reflection, right? So that's the hardest part, is you think through who you are, what you want to do, what you do best, why you want the job from your personal perspective. And you need to do a lot of thinking before coming here. So standard question like, tell me about yourself. Why the hiring manager want to ask those questions, right? It's really to differentiate candidate A from B, from C, from D, right? You can tell a little bit about like your elevator speech, your strengths, your expertise, and maybe a little bit personal. It's up to you, right? If you're comfortable sharing, I'm a newcomer. I came to Canada. I love this great country. And why I love Canada, why I want to settle down, and that's a great something nice to hear. And why I love this job, right? And why I'm so interested in this opportunity, right? What are your top 3 strengths? The recruiters and the hiring manager might ask. And those also are the opportunities for hiring manager to understand why we and evaluate, right? Why we should choose you versus the other 3 or 4 candidates. And always link your strengths to the job requirements, right? Say the job requires great technical skills, or it is a must-have for you to have a different IT, say, application experience. So highlight those. Those are, I have spent some time. I have, say, 5 years of experience working in those areas, which makes me, which I see as the #1 strength applying for this job, right? That shows that you have done your analysis, you have done your research and homework, and you have understood what the job needs. Why should RBC hire you? It's very similar question, but try to align your value with RBC value, right? Why you're the best fit for the role. What attracts you to this role, it really, like I said, it needs some real personal reflection. There's no standard answer to that. It can be because a great company like RBC, it might be this role allows you to do what you do best, or maybe allows you some growth opportunities, right? You've done a lot of things in the past. You want to try something different, and you can contribute a lot to the team from what you have been able to accumulate in the past. We also get asked about, sometimes the recruiters and the hiring manager would ask, tell us about your weakness and your challenges, right? And it's a tricky question. So what I want to invite you to think is, when the recruiters and the hiring managers ask those questions, they do not want to dig into your failures, right? The more failure we hear, the happier. No. We want to look at how when you're encountering challenges and barriers in life, when you fail, what approach, what attitude you have to get out and to overcome those challenges, right? What's your weakness? So you can say, you can be frankly and very direct and honest. I'm a newcomer to Canada. I don't know much about Canadian work culture, right? That is true, and everybody's facing it. But this is what I'm taking to really overcome. You want to show your positive attitude and what actions you have been taking to overcome those barriers. Like, I go to Access Employment to get myself acquainted to more Canadian work culture. I volunteer in certain places so that I can practice my English communication skills, and how to really show you're positive, you have green energy, and you have you're solution oriented, right? Because nobody's perfect. We all face the weakness, and we all have our weaknesses. We all face challenges in life. The important thing that the hiring manager wants to see is, what is your attitude towards those challenges, right? So always remember that. Okay, so next question, next slide. So there are behavior interview questions. Those are typical HR questions, and I would also say you can find a lot of those standard questions in just by Googling, right? So some examples we have: tell me about a time when you went above and beyond to help a customer, how you work effectively under pressure, blah, blah, blah. You made a mistake, and how did you handle it? So think about also from the hiring manager's perspective. What are they trying to find out? What are they trying to find out? And a typical HR or a phrase, a performance term we use is the past behavior predicts the future performance. That's why we ask this behavior questions, right? So tell me about a time when you went beyond and helped a customer. Why we ask this question? Because we want to know in the future, if you have some similar situation, how would you handle, right? Based on the question you answer, right? How you work effectively under pressure. We want to know what approach you take. So so there's a lot of opportunities for you to think through those questions and think about your personal style. I want to stress again, there's no perfect answer to those questions. It's about you, and it's about what makes you stand out and how you work, what thought process you go through as an individual. And sometimes it might not work with this team, it might work with the other team. Now, maybe it's not the style that this hiring manager is looking for, but you stay true to yourself, and that's going to help you stand out eventually, right? So there are some particular ways to answer those questions, and then the most common technique we want to introduce is called the STAR approach. I believe it's in the next slide, Sonia. Yeah. So what is a STAR approach? Is basically tell us about the situation, right? And what were you tasked to do? So the task can involve some challenges, right? So it was a very priority project, and we were asked to complete the project maybe 2 weeks earlier, and one resource was on leave, expected leave. So those are the challenges. So what action did you take? And what was the result? Of course, the result was the most important, but action that it allows the hiring manager to see how you problem solve, right? And then the result is that the end, what really happened. And those kind of questions, and if you answer the question that way, that helps the hiring manager evaluate you against other candidates more effectively. So, you know, some candidate might just give it a very, very generic answer, but some, so I will give an example. I recently interviewed for a position. No, I didn't interview for a position. I interviewed a few people for a position I was hiring. So I asked everybody the same question, right? About how you learn, and a lot of them are new grads, right? So this particular candidate that who impressed me a lot was, he really wanted to have a recruitment experience, and the challenge is he was at school, which allowed him very minimum opportunity to get the experience. What he ended up doing is we want to see candidates really have positive attitude and take initiatives. So what he ended up doing was he volunteered himself in a lot of the student associations. And in those student association or initiatives, they need to recruit people to join. So he volunteered to do the recruitment piece of those student initiatives. So he designed the questions, he did the interviews, and he did the evaluation, which helped him to his best capacity and the best circumstances that allow him to have that kind of experience, right? And he also he was tasked to manage or to be the team lead of a group of web designers, but he didn't have the experience or expertise in designing some kind of website. So he signed himself for those fundamental courses just to get a better understanding, a high-level understanding of the web design. So that was a really impressive interview because, he might not have what he needs, all he needs. He didn't have the expertise in recruitment, but what ended up happening is he took the initiative to learn, and he was very positive. He grabbed all the opportunities, right? That really is a good prediction of the future work performance. Say, not every work scenario is perfect. We want to hire people who take initiative, who solve the problem, try to solve the problem on their own, who always have the growth mindset, right? That's what the hiring managers are constantly looking for. Okay, so that's something I really want to share. I hope that can help you prepare your interviews in the future. So Sonia, if we could move to the next. So it's your turn to ask questions. How important is this stage? It's extremely, extremely important. A lot of times when, say, the hiring manager says, oh, those are all the questions I have. Do you have any questions? And the candidate would say, no, you have answers. You know, I'm pretty okay. And you are losing a huge opportunity to further present yourself. You know, and in a lot of successful interviews and the successful candidate, they have a ton of questions to ask. But you always want to be respectful of time. You say, hey, you know, some of my questions, I have prepared this list of questions. Some you have answered and we had a good discussion. I have maybe 2, 3 more, but I want to be mindful of our time. I noticed that we only have 5 minutes left. I can choose my top 2 questions to ask, or if you have more time, I can ask more. So put those in the front, and so that you're not worried about overuse the hiring manager's time, and then ask your questions. You should do a lot of research before you come and write down your questions. There are some very easy, you know, what do you like about the working for RBC? How was your career journey? Like, what is the day-to-day like for this role? Those are some questions, but you can also show how you stand out from the crowd by doing deeper research about the role. Say if this is a strategy role in RBC, right? You can do not only research in RBC, but the whole banking industry. I see TD is doing this. I noticed, you know, BMO has this, and does RBC have plan to, how does RBC continue to be the industry leader, right? Have you thought about this? This is what. Do some, you know, this is the research I've done. This is the industry best practice. This is where I see I can help RBC. And what do you think? So there's so many opportunities. You can use the last portion of the interview to really, really impress the hiring manager, right? And of course, it's always valid to ask, what's the next step and timeline? Is it okay for me to send in a thank you note? And you know, I would say 100% of the time, the hiring manager would say yes. They would either offer you their email, or say maybe just connect with me on LinkedIn. So this is the perfect opportunity for you to stand out. Okay, so the last phase definitely is to do a nice closure. Just send Sonia, if you could move on to the next slide. Then send a nice thank you note within 24 hours. This is an additional opportunity for you to show the person you are. Be grateful of the opportunity, be professional, and further express your interest why you're the best candidate for the role. So do not give that opportunity out. So always do that. Sometimes it's not about who does it. Sometimes it's about who doesn't do it. So always think about it. This is a competition, and there's only one offer out there. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to stop here because there's only 10 minutes left, and we have some Q&A opportunities. I'm going to pass it back to Sonia. Hopefully the information I share is useful for you, and hopefully you can switch your mindset from the candidate perspective to what a hiring manager is looking for. That's what I want you to always keep in mind.
Thank you, Vivian. A lot of information. I hope everyone was able to gather as much as they could. And this is your opportunity to ask questions. So please type them into the questions tab. Please keep them related to today's webinar and keep them short so we can answer as many as we can. Manuel has a question here. Should I mention upfront about my visa status? What do you say? Like, should you say anything that you've applied for your visa and are still waiting for the response? I guess you mean your work permit in that case. Yes. So,
So I
yeah,
wouldn't recommend asking those questions in the interview because that shows you have not done your homework.
yeah.
Yeah. So I would say do your homework, do some research about, what is the work permit situation in Canada and whether you're eligible. Do your homework way, way before you come to the interview. It's not the employer's opportunity, the responsibility to answer those questions for you. We want to hire someone who's eligible to work in Canada.
Okay. Next question is from Sada Sivan. He's landing in Canada soon, and he's wondering if he's applied to RBC jobs, will he be able to get a Skype interview with them, or does he have to meet them in person when he lands?
Realistically, most of the situation we want to meet in person. However, there are situations where Canada does not have enough good candidate we're looking for, so we're going global. For example, a lot of the IT related, like cybersecurity roles, and we don't have enough talent pool in Canada. In those cases, we're willing to accommodate and do the video interview, but most of the roles we still prefer to interview someone. For example, our banking roles and customer service roles, we even need to know where you are located because we want to assign you to our closest branch. So we would need to you to be here in person.
All right. And should you always follow up after an interview?
You should always send a thank you note. You are welcome to follow up, but I definitely want to encourage you not to get discouraged if you don't get a response, because our recruiters are extremely busy, and we cannot promise to get back to everybody, and so are the hiring managers. So just feel free to follow up, but do not get discouraged or frustrated if you don't get a response.
Right. And so when the hiring manager asks if you have any questions for us, I know you went over this, but could you just quickly give another example of what kind of questions to ask?
So yeah, so that person didn't listen just now. uh, yeah, I would say go back and listen to the recording. That's not waste.
Yes. So yes, if you've missed that part, please listen to the recording again. Another question here is, how important is having a Canadian accent from the interviewer's perspective? Like, would they decide on something based on the person's accent?
Um, Absolutely, they shouldn't.
Yeah.
So at RBC, we do provide a lot of remove hiring bias training to our recruiters and our hiring managers. And like I mentioned, over 40% of our recruiters are visible minorities, and they're either first generation or second generation immigrants, which means, like myself, we all have accents, not Canadian, not we all have accents from different parts of the world, and that makes who we are, right? I would recommend you to focus more on what you can bring to the table versus not being confident because you have an accent. Canadian workforce will largely depend on immigrants in currently already very largely depend on immigrants, and it will more and more depend on immigrants. So employers need to have a good newcomer inclusion practice, which means accent shouldn't be the deciding factor when they interview someone, right? Even some good companies with good diversity and the immigrant inclusion practice, even in some of their communication teams, they purposely, or in their trainings, they purposely choose someone with an accent because they want to demonstrate that they are inclusive.
Perfect, thank you. Another question here, good question. Is it advisable to do a salary discussion with the hiring manager during the interview?
I would say keep that conversation after you get the offer, right? In most cases, however, if the hiring manager is so excited after meeting you and they say they initiated the conversation, this is I'm really impressed by you and I want to offer you the job on the spot. This is the salary we are able to present, and you feel free to have that discussion with the hiring manager. And you're always, when you have the first initial, like a recruiter interview, you're eligible to ask, can I ask the salary range? Because the recruiter at that stage might not know what's the final offer, but they should have known the salary range. So if you're within your right to ask for the range so that you can do your research and make your decision.
Perfect, thank you. And how do you address lack of Canadian work experience during an interview?
I would say stick to your strengths, right? And I would say focus less, and you need to change your mindset. The fact that you're already invited to the interview means you have everything needed to be successful in the job, right? You and the 4 other candidates, that your resume is impressive. The hiring manager didn't mind that you don't have the Canadian experience. So why do you mind, right? Take that out of your mind and focus on what you can bring to the table. Focus on how your global experience can bring the advantage and how you can bring diverse perspectives to the team, to their solutions. You can come up with innovative approaches to help them solve challenges versus, I don't have Canadian experience, what can you do, right? So think about that. The fact that you're invited, that means you're qualified.
All right. And question here is, when you're applying for jobs, it asks it to declare if you are a visible minority. If they do declare it, how does this affect them being employed, or how is that looked upon by a hiring manager?
Yeah, okay, so that is a good question. So we, some good companies with good diversity practice, we do ask that question. And those questions in most companies are confidential. The answers are confidential. And we collect, from a recruitment perspective, we collect those information to measure our own diversity practice. So whether we're able to attract enough, say, visible minorities or persons with disabilities or indigenous or females. And if we were not able to attract enough, so what kind of initiatives or campaigns we need to do to make sure that we have a good diversity mix in our candidate pool, right? So it can only play your favor versus put you into a disadvantaged situation. For most companies, hiring managers don't really have the visibility to those answers. It's only the recruiters at RBC, the recruiters do have access, and they can use those to promote some diversity initiatives. For example, there's a huge effort to hire more females into IT jobs. We might use that data to have some targeted campaigns, encourage females to apply. So that's how we use the information. So I want to make sure that, and you always have the chance, have the opportunity to choose not to respond. we have say yes, no, and I choose not to respond. So you can always choose not to respond. Whether you choose yes, no, or not to respond, that should not impact your candidacy.
Okay, thank you. Next question here is, let's make this the last one. I know we're running out of time. When you spoke about behavioral questions, does this, like, do you give your best examples or from each previous employment, or do you just use examples from your most previous employment?
It's definitely the best example that help you align your experience and the expertise to what this job is looking for. It's not about the last or the most recent employer, the most recent experience. It is the example that can help you sell yourself in the interview.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Vivian. I won't take more of your time. Again, very, very informative. I hope we can have more webinars like this again with you. And Vivian, is there anything you'd like to say before I move forward?
No, I mean, I hope this is good and this is useful to all the participants. And like I said, I do understand that it's not an easy journey, but we are here with you. You just need some patience and persistence. When you get the job offer, when you look back, you will know that it's not easy, but you made it. I'm sure everybody will make it. And fingers crossed and all the best.
Thank you so much, Vivian. And thank you everyone for watching today's webinar. Just want to let you know, if you still have more questions about interviews, you can go on our website, click on ACCES, and these tiles will show you where to go. So here's the one, I guess, for interviews, and you can check it out. We also have past RBC webinars and other webinars as well that you can watch related to interviews. Our next webinar coming up is next Wednesday. It's a CPA Ontario information session. So if you're interested in getting your CPA, check it out. And for people who are landing within the next few months and are fall under any of these categories, so that's engineering, finance, HR, IT, sales and marketing, supply chain, and entrepreneurship, email cec@accessemployment.ca, and they can start helping you with your job search or businesses before you even arrive in Canada. And add us on Instagram. So we are very active on our social media. If you would like to know what's happening at ACCES, whether it's online or in-house, we only post on our social media. So follow us on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And thank you again, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Vivian. I hope everyone has a great day or evening ahead, and we'll see you next time.